And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very, very high above all the odious forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. My friends, what started off as, kind of a day that I thought maybe it might be sort of hard to come up with some news stories has turned into kind of a big day on the program. So lots to get through. We got a podcast coming out today, and of course, today's live program. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number here in the Cowboy State Politics studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. If you want to be part of the program, go ahead and give me a call, something on your mind. Then we'll talk about it. To start off the program, and we should call this segment, Who in the World Would Have Saw This Coming? From the Cowpie, Wyoming Attorney General Bridget Hill among three nominated for the state Supreme Court. A judicial nominating commission, and I quote, tasked with helping Wyoming's governor fill the seat left vacant by the retiring state Supreme Court Chief Justice Kate Fox, was announced Monday. One of the three is Governor Mark Gordon's appointed State Attorney General Bridget Hill. The commission also nominated Campbell County District Court Judge Stuart Healy. He had been nominated to fill the last vacancy on the court. Wyoming Supreme Court Justice Kate Fox is retiring May 27th, and she served on the court for 11 years. She's turning 70, which is the age time limit for justices to serve on the state's highest court. Hill declined Tuesday to comment, citing the ongoing selection process. If she's already been selected, well, then, nominated for one of those three positions, then why not comment? Anyway, Olson and Healy both voiced gratitude and high opinions for the other nominees, blah, blah, blah. Wyoming does not elect judges. Commissions have nominated candidates to be appointed by the governor since 1972, a process the late former U.S. Senator Al Simpson put forth successfully as a ballot initiative when he served in the Wyoming legislature. The reason I say who would have saw this coming is Bridget Hill has been the partisan appointed attorney general for Mark Gordon's entire 8 years in office. And my friends, she really, really does not have a record for protecting the people or fighting for the people. Let me give you a case. Now, it was not that long ago that Cowboy State Politics broke the story that Bridget Hill really has not prosecuted a single election-related crime in her entire 8 years. In fact, there's over 13 cases that are sitting on her desk right now that she hasn't done anything with. Cases dating back to all the way before 2023 with 2022 with Cyrus Western and Bill Novotny. There's a whole long list of them. Now, admittedly, some of them aren't real big bombshells. Nobody's going to say, aha, this one, total malfeasance. Some of them are kind of, Nothing burgers, some of them are serious related crimes, but it doesn't really matter because Bridget Hill hasn't prosecuted a single one of them. Bridget Hill has a terrible record on guns. There's been, and really, when it boils down to it, this isn't necessarily the fault of Mark Gordon for picking her. I mean, it is, but the truth is, Wyoming should not have an appointed attorney general, and I have gone back and forth on this issue a lot, and it's just until recently, with the appointment of Bridget Hill, that I've decided, yep, we need an elected attorney general. Now, here's why. The way things are right now, the governor appoints the attorney general. So if the attorney general is interested in keeping her job, his or her job, then they're just going to do the bidding of the governor. Whatever the governor says, that's what's going to happen. Now, the narrative for a really long time has been, there's no problem in Wyoming elections. There's no reason to pass all these election integrity stuff. No. And so Bridget Hill doesn't prosecute any of them. There have been a number of cases of governmental malfeasance. Let me give you one example. Dan Zwanitzer. We had that guy dead to rights on voter fraud, and nothing happened with him. Actually got booted to the House of Representatives, and the Attorney General refused to prosecute. Now, here's the problem with that. We already know that Bridget Hill has a long history of not prosecuting political crimes, I guess is the best way to put it. So why would we expect that she's going to do anything different? So if there is a political issue that's happened, perhaps some big malfeasance, I don't know, something that maybe an elected representative or senator has done, there'd be no reason. I mean, you wouldn't even bother with writing a complaint about it because Bridget Hill's not going to do anything with it. That's her history. And so with an appointed attorney general, they're just going to do the governor's bidding. Now, on the other hand, if you have an elected attorney general, well, then an argument could be made to say, well, they're just going to be campaigning for the next election. They're always going to do what is politically expedient for them, which, that has its downsides too. But this whole thing with Bridget Hill getting nominated to go to the Supreme Court, it just smacks of the governor handing out political favors for people who have helped him the last 8 years. He pretty much did it with Ed Buchanan, put him on the bench for an appointment to the district court. So why not give it to old Bridget Hill? She's been pretty loyal to the governor. I just think that we need to get past this whole idea of political glad handing, of doing favors for your buddy. I mean, it just smacks of the swamp. And the one way to help alleviate that, though not solve all of our problems, is to have an elected attorney general. Now, there were two bills in the last legislative session that did not get moved forward. Why? I don't know. That's a story I need to ferret out. But, the amazing thing here is that this is just another example of Mark Gordon handing out political favors. Bridget Hill has never been a jurist. She's never been on any type of bench. She's not a district judge, municipal judge, nothing. So to nominate somebody who has never been on the bench to sit on the highest court, I mean, it just smacks of political favors, and I don't like it. Now, again, there are some downsides with having an elected attorney general. You make it a political office. But there again, it's always been a political office when the person in that seat does the bidding of the governor. So that's a story that I need to dig into, find out exactly why that bill wasn't moved forward. That's one of the ones that, kind of, and I'll tell you why I didn't go after it during the legislative session, because I was waiting for the FOIA request to come back from how many cases Bridget Hill had sitting on her desk as it related to, election offenses. And I mean, the answer to that is all of them. All of them are sitting on her desk because she didn't prosecute a single one of them. So there's some other politics surrounding this. Bridget Hill has been a constant target of Wyoming gun owners. Now, there are a number of people in the Wyoming Senate. Of course, Bridget Hill would have to be confirmed by the Senate. And here's where the other politics come in. The president of the Senate, Bo Beitman, definitely in Aaron Doerr's pocket. I don't know about literally, but I mean, they're so close that, I mean, they've been allies for a really long time. Tim Salazar, Tim French, Dan Larson. There's a whole bunch of them over there that are pretty close with Wyoming gun owners. And again, Bridget Hill has been a target of Wyoming gun owners. They've not spoken highly of her at all in pretty much any video that I've ever watched. And so the question is, would Bridget Hill be able to get confirmed in the Senate? And will President Bo Biden, vote for her? I would have to say, given his fealty to Aaron Dorr and Wyoming gun owners, I would have to say that's going to be a big fat no. But if he votes in favor of confirming Bridget Hill, well, then that'll tell you volumes about him, as if we already didn't know a whole bunch. So there's a lot of different political things surrounding this selection of Bridget Hill to be one of the three candidates that goes to the governor. So lots to watch, and it's going to be fascinating how it turns out. Here's how the process works of filling vacancies in the state of Wyoming. If it is a county office, like a county commissioner or the assessor or the county clerk or whatever, what happens at the county level is the party in power, in this case, the Republican Party. The Democrats don't control a single one of the county parties. But so the party, whichever party won that office, gets to select three candidates that are going to be forwarded to the county commission. Then the county commission would pick one of those. If it's at the state level, we've had a number of these as of late with the state superintendent of public instruction and the secretary of state. Those are the two most recent ones that have been filled. Well, then the state Republican Party, or whichever party controls that particular office, in this case, it's all Republicans. So the state Republican Party Central Committee gets together and they pick three nominees to send to the governor, and then the governor picks from one of those. Now, when it relates to the Judicial Nominating Board, the process is the same. The group is different. There's a board that's put together that's headed by the Chief Justice, in this case, Kate Fox, and there's a bunch of other political appointees on it. Let's see here. Here we go. From the Cowboy. The commission also comprised three lawyers elected by the Wyoming State Bar: the Devin O'Connell of Laramie, Mandy Good of Cheyenne, and Clint Langer of Sheridan. Three non-lawyers appointed by the governor. So there's three that are appointed by the State Bar and three that are appointed by the governor. That's Dan Kirkbride of Chugwater, Lisa Anderson of Shell, and Rick Fagnant of Lander. So it's another political board that's selecting these nominees to go forward. It was not that long ago that we filled another Supreme Court justice seat. That was one of those nominees was old Timmy Stubson. If you remember, I did a number of episodes on those on him on the podcast. So there's lots of politics surrounding the filling of the vacancy on the Supreme Court, and lots to watch. Like I said, the long and the short of it is, this is one more reason why we absolutely need an elected attorney general. Coming up after the break, one of the bigger stories that came out yesterday is that Harriet Hageman has decided that she's not going to do any more in-person town halls because of threats from not necessarily the Democrat Party, but Democrat activists. So we're going to do that story right after the break. And there's a bit of a bit of controversy surrounding this because Joe Barbudo was given the option to participate in a dialogue with Harriet Hageman. Perfect opportunity to get something done, and instead, he attacked her. Weird Democrats doing that. We'll talk about that in just a second. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. You can get the Cowboy State Politics podcast at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. There's a new one coming out today that'll be published shortly after I finish today's program. It's going to be a fun one, my friends. We've got Harriet Hageman and the Sheridan Press doubling down. I'm going to talk about them in just a second, but first, I want to get to this all of the controversy surrounding the Harriet Hageman rallies, and I don't even know really if it's a controversy. It's pretty sad if you ask me. But the last couple of town halls, which I have covered in depth, have pretty much turned into circuses. And it's my theory, and I said this right after the Afton Town Hall, that I believe, and this is kind of a national controversy too, but there's this group Indivisible that's been advertising that activists should go out to town halls of all members of Congress and just disrupt them. Now, while I'm not saying this actually happened in Wyoming, there's a chance, because at the Laramie Town Hall, there were lots of reports of people from the Democrat Party who were there saying, yeah, I've never seen a lot of these people before. And Republicans saying, yeah, I don't know that any of these folks have ever showed up at any of our other events. And there were anecdotal reports that there were several people from out of state beyond our southern border. And so, I mean, the chances are pretty good that, yeah, there were some activists at Harriet's town hall. And I think if you watch the video, and there's several versions of it online, clips and sound bites of it have been posted all over the place. In fact, I played some on the program. Pretty nasty stuff. And really, the intent behind it was to make sure that Representative Hageman couldn't speak, that she was not going to be heard. No questions are going to be asked. So from the Cowpie, this one's from the Wyoming Turkey Vulture. Hageman moves town hall events online due to safety concerns. And I quote, Wyoming's sole member of the United States House of Representatives announced Tuesday that her upcoming town halls will be online only due to safety concerns following a raucous event in Laramie last week. As, quote, as the saying goes, this is why we can't have nice things, Harriet Hageman said in a news release late Tuesday morning. At the town hall last Wednesday night in Laramie, more than 500 attendees packed into the auditorium of the historic Laramie Plains Civic Center. Hageman was met with boos and critical chants throughout the event. Some constituents stood and clapped for Hageman, but they were outnumbered and drowned out by those that opposed Hageman's policy positions. Okay, so this is where the media goes off the rails. Now, while that is what they were saying outwardly, I'm sure that's what a lot of those signs said, that's not what they were saying. A lot of And in the audio, it's pretty clear. You can hear a lot of swearing and screaming and all manner of disruption. At one point, Harriet looks at the crowd and she says, "If you don't calm down, you're going to have a heart attack." And that was basically the tenor of it. Just people going bat crap crazy. Video that I've got from the event was pretty amazing. So it was not just people that were opposed to Hageman. I mean, there were lots of folks, and I guess those that were sent there to disrupt the event. They're opposed to her too. But really, the intent of a lot of the people that were there was to just disrupt it. Now, according to Hageman's news release, more than 20 officers from multiple agencies were assigned to monitor a town hall in Wheatland on Thursday, the day after the Laramie event. She added that staff in her Wyoming and Washington, D.C. offices have received, quote, numerous credible threatening phone calls and emails, and all of them are currently being investigated by multiple law enforcement agencies. Despite the law enforcement presence, Hageman said an attendee followed her, leaving the venue in Wheatland, and initiated a physical confrontation with staff. Platte County Sheriff David Russell told the Turkey Vulture that there were around 15 officers and his staff working the event. He added that the physical confrontation an attendee had with Hageman's staff was a local woman in her 60s or 70s who was getting too close to Hageman as she was leaving and had to be held back as the congresswoman exited. She was not charged with the crime for her actions. Now, when somebody of Representative Hageman's caliber says that there are and have been credible threats to her safety, she's not understating the matter. When you hear that phrase, usually when you hear that phrase, credible threat, it means that there are folks that have stated that they're going to harm the congresswoman, and that those threats are legitimate enough to initiate the involvement of law enforcement, and absolutely they should be investigated. And I mean, there's no call for that. So it's kind of a bummer that it's a really big bummer that Harriet can't hold any more in-person events, simply because some folks want to disrupt them, and they don't want to be there for any constructive reason. One of those people that doesn't want to be there for any constructive reason is Joe Barbudo. He is the state chairman of the Wyoming Democrat Party. At the Rock Springs event, Joe Barbudo was given a perfect opportunity to have a dialogue with Representative Hageman. She even called him up to the podium to talk about what was going on. And instead, Barbudo attacked her. In response to Harriet's statement that was issued yesterday, he issued a statement of his own, basically attacking the congresswoman, instead of, telling his followers. I say the word followers because I think the Democrat Party has pretty much turned into a cult. They're not Barbudo's constituents anymore. They're his followers. And in many ways, the Democrat Party and a lot of these neo-Marxists really do have their own religion. But anyway, instead of Barbudo saying, "Hey, this isn't helpful. You don't attack the congresswoman," he attacked her. And so we're going to cover that on the podcast. So I'm going to leave that part there, and I'll go into that in depth on this morning's show on the podcast. So the Sheridan Press, there are some people that when they screw up, they'll admit it and say, "Oops, my bad, I screwed up," and then they'll fix it and go along their merry way. There are some folks who try to avoid admitting that they have made a mistake, and instead they try to cover it up. And as we all know, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. And then there are some folks that intentionally do something wrong and refuse to own up to it. This, my friends, is the Sheridan Press. Now, I covered this a little bit on the program yesterday, but in the Friday edition of the Sheridan Press, they claimed, and it's right down here on page A3 of Friday's edition, they claimed right here that the Sheridan County Republican Party did not properly notice their meeting, and that was a violation of Wyoming law. But if you look right here is the public notice in which they absolutely did publish it. So the Sheridan Press, on the same page that they claim that the Republican Party didn't meet their statutory guidelines, they published the public notice right there. So anyway, on Monday's edition of the podcast, I went through all of that and called them out for it. Sources have told Cowboy State Politics that yesterday the Sheridan Press spent 4 hours in meetings discussing what to do with David's podcast. And one of the comments I heard out of it, and I've got multiple sources, one of them inside the paper. Good luck keeping everything quiet, Ashley Snoozy. Ashley Snoozy is the editor of the Sheridan Press. Anyway, one of those comments was, "We're not giving a comment to Iverson." There were some colorful metaphors used in the middle there. But yeah, so instead of owning up to their intentional misreporting, misreporting isn't even the right word. Lying is probably a better word. So instead of just issuing a retraction, which is what they should do, what any responsible journalist would do, what I do when I make a mistake is I own up to it. In fact, I lead with my mistakes so that you know that, hey, I'm correcting it and I'll do better in the future. And the reason you do that, even, you admit your mistakes, is it goes to your credibility. And if a journalist without any credibility is nothing more than an opinion blogger. And when your audience knows that, hey, when you get things wrong, you'll correct them, it helps your integrity. Well, the Sheridan Press isn't going to do that. In fact, they've decided, and multiple sources have told Cowboy State Politics, that they are going to imperiously write an article at the end of this week describing the difference between a public notice and an advertisement. By the way, there is no difference. There's no difference between what the Republican Party published in Friday's edition of the Sheridan Press on the same page that the Sheridan Press decided, oh, no, this isn't a public notice. But now they're going to write an article and they're going to tell the public what the difference is between a public notice and an advertisement. And they are going to refuse to print a retraction. Now, there is no difference in Wyoming statute between what I showed you on the camera. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there is a screenshot of this page on the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. And so, I haven't seen today's paper. It's not out till noon, but my guess is this will be the fourth day in a row that the Sheridan Press has refused to issue a retraction about their intentional misreporting of the facts surrounding the Sheridan County Republican Party. So, who would have saw that coming? Certainly not me, but they're doubling down, and to their detriment, because this one, I'm not going to turn loose of this one, and here's why. Because several months ago, the Sheridan Press published an op-ed in which the author directly called yours truly a liar in those words. And so why would I lay off when I've got the Sheridan Press, red-handed, lying to their constituents? And this is just a reason why you shouldn't trust your local paper. The Sheridan Press makes an extraordinary amount of money off of public notices. All local papers do. And to my knowledge, there's only one local paper in the state of Wyoming that even halfway leans to the right or even is halfway fair, and that's the Newsletter Journal over in Newcastle. They at least do a fair job of reporting. I know some of the people that work there. They're fair people. They're good journalists. And so, what you have is local papers that really exist, but for no other reason than they get paid by your tax dollars. A couple of years ago, I did a study into the Buffalo Bulletin, and actually, at one time, the Buffalo Bulletin was owned by the same consortium that has interest in the Sheridan Press, or at least I was told that. Anyway, in 1 year, I calculated that just the meeting minutes from the city council and the county commissioners, publishing of the salaries and school board publications, that the Buffalo Bulletin collected more than $90,000 a year. And that doesn't include all of the mandated oil and gas publications, all the probate stuff, different court filings. That didn't include any of that. So you can probably double or triple that amount in the amount of money that comes from public notices. And if you're the paper of record, which the Sheridan Press and the Buffalo Bulletin are, they're the only two papers in two counties, well, that's a tremendous amount of money. And so why would the Sheridan Press think that they have to own up to their intentional fabrication isn't the right word, their intentional lying in their newspaper? They wouldn't. And they don't have to, because they don't have to rely on their circulation. They get a tremendous amount of money from your tax dollars. And so they're not accountable to you. They can print whatever they want, whatever lie they want, and there's nothing to hold them accountable. So, Ashley Snoozy, you need to come clean. You need to print a retraction. And by the way, I'm not going to turn loose of this until you do. So anyway, Sheridan Press doubling down stupidly. Instead, what they should do is they should just own up to their mistake, like other good journalists do. All the good journalists print retractions, but not Ashley Snoozy's newspaper. Nope. No, they're too high and mighty. We'll see how far they fall.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, Wyoming's conservative voice, documented to be almost always right, way more than the Sheridan Press, 99% of the time. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Me and the studio dogs are quickly moving through another busy broadcast hour on the program. Let's see here. What's next up in the stack of stuff? From the Babylon Bee. Elon Musk has disguised the IRS building as a Tesla dealership so that Democrats will burn it down. And I quote, proponents of eliminating the federal income tax rejoiced today as Elon Musk cleverly disguised the IRS service headquarters as a Tesla dealership so Democrats would burn it down. The billionaire inventor and entrepreneur hatched the genius plan to cover up the main IRS building with Tesla emblems and signage, which goaded angry Democrats to launch a large-scale firebomb attack against the building. Quote, this'll show Musk who's boss. Burn it to the ground, one enraged leftist reportedly shouted before throwing a Molotov cocktail through a window of the IRS building. This looks different from any other Tesla dealership I've ever seen. It's almost like a really old government building. Oh well, it all has to go. Everything he owns must be destroyed. When reached for comment, Musk was quietly pleased that his plan had worked. It was quite a simple idea, really, he said. If Democrats are trying to burn down everything belonging to me, why not direct that anger in a useful way and burn down something that should be demolished anyway? For the cost of a few Tesla signs, we've now freed the American people from the terrible burden of excessive taxation. Ironically, once the rubble of the IRS building is cleared, we will, in fact, build an enormous new Tesla dealership in its place. Exactly what should happen to the IRS building. But I think what it exposes is the ridiculousness of the Democrats' outrage. See, they're not really interested in affecting policy. It's just opposition. And that's exactly what you saw at the Hageman Town Hall meeting in Laramie. Just opposition, nothing constructive at all. And it was just an attempt to create disruption and be loud and, not allow anything to happen. Because the Democrats really don't have a plan. The only thing they have is obstruction. And, that's when that's all you've got, well, you've got to continue on. From Breitbart, Trump has revealed that a National Security Council staffer was the person who added the Atlantic editor to the group chat on the Houthi strikes. Now, if you're unaware of what's been happening, there was a reporter that was included in a group chat of all of our top national security people, and the conversation was the strikes on the Houthi rebels. And this reporter, to his credit, didn't publish anything that he had heard in or saw in that group chat until after the strikes on the Houthis had happened. So, good job on him. But the question is, how did he get in there in the first place? According to Breitbart, quote, President Donald Trump revealed Tuesday that a National Security Council staffer and aide to the National Security Advisor Mike Walls added the Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg to a Signal group chat on military strikes against the Houthis. Trump told NBC News during a phone interview that, quote, it was one of Michael's people on the phone. A staffer had his number on there. The president did not reveal the name of the staffer. He also defended Walls for using Signal to coordinate on the strikes, saying, quote, Michael Walls has learned a lesson, and he's a good man. He also said Goldberg's presence in the chat, quote, had no impact at all on the strikes and expressed confidence in his national security team, most of whom were in the group chat. He added that it was the only glitch in 2 months, and it turned out to not be a so serious one. So it was not one of our top national security people. It was actually a staffer that added that number. And, and not to defend what happened, because I'm kind of shocked that this was even allowed to happen, that you would have a staffer have access to what is definitely probably a classified conversation, though it goes on in the article that Trump says that there wasn't any classified intelligence in that group chat. But, I mean, honestly, you've got the Secretary of Defense and other top military officials in there. Yeah, there's got to be something that's classified. I mean, for no other reason that it's a conversation between that group of people. But it wasn't one of our officials. It was a staffer. So let's see here. War hero Richard Blumenthal said that the group chat has the potential for an Espionage Act violation. Richard Blumenthal was on TV with CNN, and here is what he had to say.
To describe these kinds of very precise, specific details as undeserving of classification, top secret status, is head-spinning from the top officials of our security establishment. And I agree there has to be accountability. If the facts are as reported, there should be resignations, and there should be an investigation either by the Defense Department IG, Inspector General, or by the FBI, the specific security investigative service within the FBI, because there is potentially here a violation of the Espionage Act, as well as the Federal Records and Presidential Records Act. There are serious potential violations of law at stake here. And the denial that we've heard about this material being classified is jaw-dropping.
All right. I just can't stand him anymore. The reason why I call him war hero Richard Blumenthal is that when he was running for the Senate, he claimed to be a Vietnam War hero. But in truth, he never served in Vietnam. He was in the military during that time, but he was never deployed. Nope. Spent his entire time stateside, even though he claimed to be this Vietnam veteran war hero person. And I mean, at the time there was, somewhere I've got a whole bunch of articles talking about how he lied about his military service, convinced his aides to lie about his military service. And it's definitely a case of, and I don't know, maybe not legally, but it's definitely a case of stolen valor, claiming you did something when you didn't. So moving on. Recently, we've been hearing a lot about executive orders coming from the office of the president. And as you all know, I'm not a big fan of these for a couple of reasons. First of all, the Constitution really doesn't grant the commander-in-chief the power to issue executive orders at all, even though this has kind of been a thing since George Washington was president. Though I think George Washington only issued 1 or 2 executive orders. We're way beyond that now. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them. Of course, the Biden administration, they pretty much did everything through executive order because they couldn't get it through Congress. And historically, that's what presidents have done. If you can't get one of your things through Congress, well, then just issue an executive order. Now, some of these that Trump has issued are a good thing. He has to reverse everything that Joe Biden did. And there are a number. One of the biggest ones, and I watched a special on DEI on the Blaze, I don't know, maybe over the weekend. And it's incredible how deep the DEI rot has gone into our system. And all of it was done through executive orders dating all the way back to President Obama. Now, one of the first things that Donald Trump did is he reversed those there was 2 of them, 2 DEI executive orders that Barack Obama signed, and then he went to work on President Biden's. So there are some things that have to be done by executive order, and that's to reverse all the bull crap that Joe Biden and his pals did before. But now there are different measures that the administration has been moving forward on without Congress. Now, let's talk about the Department of Education. So there are lots of expansions that have been made in the Department of Education through the executive branch that has just been presidents and that agency all on its own, expanding the breadth and scope of the purview of the Department of Education. All of those things can be reversed through executive action. But since it was Congress that actually created the Department of Education, to do away with it, well, then it's going to take congressional action. So lots of, frankly, I think that abolishing the Department of Education is absolutely a good thing. We don't need it. Education is not one of the roles of government, even though in the state of Wyoming, it's in our Constitution that we're going to provide a free education to all K through 12 students. There's a big historical story behind why we did that. And one of those, basically it was that Wyoming had the reputation of being a territory full of criminals, and in Congress we were kind of, oh, look at those stupid people in the Wyoming territory. Well, at the Constitutional Convention, a lot of our folks were like, yeah, we'll show them. We'll put education in the Constitution. Okay, that's one side of it. The other side of it is really there were some, true progressives at our Constitutional Convention, which is why some of the things in our Constitution are written that way, the education piece being one of those. Now, from Breitbart News, Trump signs fresh batch of executive orders on the Treasury and on election integrity. Let's read it. Quote, President Donald Trump signed 4 executive orders on Tuesday, ranging from modernizing payment systems in the Department of the Treasury to election integrity measures to suspensions of security clearances. Trump signed the group of orders during a meeting with U.S. ambassadors in the cabinet room. One order directs the Treasury Department's payment system to use electronic payments rather than checks beginning on September 30th, 2025. I'm okay with that one. The Treasury is definitely under the purview of the executive branch. Let's see here. The order is aimed at rooting out waste. Now, Trump emphasized the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent wants to modernize the system, adding that it should have been done 2 or 3 decades ago. Another related order Trump signed is to produce, let's see here, and I didn't get the rest of it. But anyway, so there were some measures on election integrity, and basically the executive order said that if you're going to vote in at all, you have to prove that you're a United States citizen. It was Wyoming's most recent legislative session that passed the first in the nation law that says if you're going to vote, you have to prove that you're a citizen and a resident. Absolutely a good bill. We should have done it a long time ago. But the question is, should it have gone through Congress? And the answer to that is an absolute yes. During my last interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, I asked her about all these executive orders. And no surprise, she's not in favor of all of them. Listen to what she said.
One of my frustrations, David, is that executive orders have no legal authority or effect whatsoever already, but people act like they do. And so that's where, I know I say this, that's where lawsuits and litigation needs to come into effect, and people need to be much more aggressive at challenging executive authority. Executive orders only apply within the agencies. It's an internal memo. It's just like me sending a memo to my staffers saying, I want to make sure that we capitalize every first letter of a sentence. That's an executive order. I can't force somebody in the Department of Transportation to capitalize the first letter in every sentence because I don't have that authority over them. But that's what we've done is over the years, we have ceded so much authority and responsibility to the executive branch to the point where people have lost all muscle memory of understanding that it truly is us that are the lawmakers. And so what I would do if I were Governor Gordon is I would start filing lawsuits over that saying.
All right. So you get the point. Harriet Hageman says that an executive order is no different than a memo to your staff, a memo to the entire department that you're over. So to the extent that the executive order covers the executive branch, well then, yeah, it's okay. But if you are just crafting law out of whole cloth through an executive order, that's the same thing that we accuse the Democrats of doing, and it's absolutely not right. Even though the executive order, I would agree with it in principle. I don't agree with how it went through. There's lots of things that need to go through the legislative branch, and Harriet's absolutely right that the legislative branch has ceded a lot of their power to the executive branch, and that's true at the federal level. It's true at the state level. I can't tell you how many pieces of legislation I've read in Wyoming that have the phrase, the agency shall promulgate rules. Well, you're giving free license to a group of bureaucrats who were never elected to write rules that other people are going to follow. The most egregious example of this at the federal level is the ATF. The ATF constantly issues new rules regarding firearms. One of the more egregious ones was they decided to classify all gun parts as firearms. So in a firearm, I mean, the only way that it becomes a firearm is if it can shoot a projectile. So the barrel of a firearm is not a firearm. The trigger of a firearm is not a firearm. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. But according to the ATF, nope, all of them are firearms, and thus they can be regulated under the National Firearms Act. Absolutely outside of the bounds of the authority of the ATF. And we see the same sort of behavior in just about every single agency. And if you picked any one of them, the Department of Education, the ATF, you name it, you're going to find all sorts of rules that they've crafted that absolutely should have gone through Congress, but didn't. And instead, it's just a bunch of unelected bureaucrats that are writing laws when, in fact, it should be the people that we voted for. And that's the biggest reason why these departments shouldn't be passing, and the president or governor shouldn't be doing executive orders, because it's got to go through legislators, representatives of the people. We'll finish up in a minute. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, TheBuffaloWoolCO.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland. France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to continue to expand with new program offerings all the time. I've got something new in the works, my friends, and I can't wait to tell you about it. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics live on a Wednesday. Now, before the break, we talked about all these executive orders that are coming out. And, I'm not in favor of them at all. And, we need to get back to legislating and creating law the way that it's supposed to be. Because, and part of it comes down to not understanding the Constitution for most people. Most people just accept an executive order as law. It's not a law at all. And one of the worst examples of this was the vaccine mandate that Joe Biden issued. That's not a law. I mean, there was never a law. It was just him saying, hey, you got to go stick a piece of metal in your arm. But it's because we don't understand history. And some other people that don't understand history are those folks in the media. And this is a hilarious piece that I meant to cover yesterday. Now, Joy Reid, who is now out of a job from her ridiculously racist program, I think she was on CNN, but anyway, she's out of a job, and she was talking to Don Lemon, who is also out of a job. See, all these folks get fired from their major TV networks, and they start their own podcast because, clearly, if you had a big-time show on a big network, well, then people are going to listen to you. And, all podcasts have audiences. There's podcasts for all sorts of things, from people who like mushrooms to building model planes to politics, health, you name it. And all of them have an audience. And I'm not discounting any of them. What I am discounting is that the people that are on them actually have something credible to say. In this one, quote from, let's see here. I can't remember where this was from. Oh, this is from Mediaite. Joy Reid says that Canada can beat the U.S. in a war. I like their chances, she says. And I quote, Joy Reid argued on Thursday that Canada will never become an American state, as President Donald Trump wants, because they could beat their southern neighbors in a war. Well, first of all, the Canada military is dwarfed by the United States military. They are in no way comparable. But that's not really the point in Donald Trump making that comment about the 51st state anyway. That was just a jab at Justin Trudeau. And it was kind of a jab at Canada as a whole, because really they don't pose a threat to the United States at all, rather economically, militarily, or anything. And it was just a tool he used to get Canada to play along with the tariffs, to stop engaging in this trade agreement that is not in any way beneficial to both parties. Benefits Canada a great deal, doesn't really benefit us. And so it was a tool in the tariff game. But they went on She says, Grampy Trump, let's talk. First of all, you can't make Canada the 51st state without going to war with them. And she says, let me explain what happened the last time, how that worked out the last time we had to go to war with Canada. They burned the White House to the ground in 1814 and won the war. Okay, so that was the War of 1812, and it was not a war with Canada, and Canada nor the British won that war because it's often referred to by historians as our second American Revolution. It was the second war for independence because it wasn't that long after the Revolutionary War that the British decided to take it again, and Canada, or to try it again rather, and Canada, being a British protectorate, or a British part of the British Empire, well, they kind of engaged in it. Not really, because, it was mostly the British Army. But anyway, here is what Joy Reid and Don Lemon talked about, as ridiculous as it is. Listen to this.
Grampy Trump, let's talk. First of all, you can't make Canada the 51st state without going to war with them. And let me explain how that happened, how that worked out the last time we tried to go to war with Canada. They burned the White House to the ground in 1814 and won the war. Canada beat us in the War of 1812. They probably liked their chances against us.
So first of all, it wasn't Canada that burned the White House to the ground. It was the British. Canada was not really the aggressor in there. In fact, Canada wasn't even a country then. It was part of the British Empire. And secondly, it was the British that burned the White House in 1814, and they didn't win the war because we're all not British citizens right now. Nope. Technically, I guess you could say the War of 1812 ended in a stalemate, but it kind of means that they lost the war because, we're not British right now. So anyway, be very careful about who you're listening to on podcasts. Make sure that you're questioning everything. Make sure you verify what I say. I started this program talking about the Sheridan Press, and so you got to verify, trust but verify. As Thomas Jefferson said, question with boldness, even the very existence of God. Question everything. And don't take what your paper or the news media or Joy Reid or any of these podcasts say for fact. Look it up yourself. Find out if what you're listening to is the truth. And that way, you know it for yourself. Do your own research. Question everything I say, and hold me to the same standard, because I wouldn't have the 99% correct percentile number if I didn't. But anyway, my friends, we've burned through another busy broadcast hour on the program. Have a good rest of your week. We'll talk tomorrow. Don't miss the podcast, which is going to be published a little bit after today's episode. It's a deep dive into the Sheridan Press doubling down and the Harriet Hageman rallies and everything. So keep it tuned to Cowboy State Politics. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.